Hello everybody, I am Navy Petty Officer 2nd Class Sean Castellano. I work for AFN Stuttgart, but I am here filming the pilot episode of something we're calling Inside EUCOM, where we want to get to know all of the different EUCOM directorates, and there's a lot of different personnel over there at EUCOM. So we want to kind of dive into what all of these different personnel do and what their function is over there at US European Command Headquarters. So with that being said, I am joined by the EUCOM Command Chaplain, that is Colonel Kleet Barclay. So sir, first of all, thank you for joining us here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. And so what is your role over at EUCOM?
So as a command chaplain, my role is, I have several, but one of the primary ones is to provide strategic guidance and information to our USEUCOM leaders, as well as the chaplain for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Service Chiefs of Chaplains. And that guidance or information may involve stuff about religion, ethics, morale, or morals going on within the EUCOM theater.
So you mentioned that it's probably a lot different being here at a combatant command headquarters rather than other duty stations you've been at. Tell me a little bit about your career and other places you've been before this.
So actually I started out as an enlisted security police back in the day, and after you sit on the flight line and do a lot of security stuff, I say there's room for repentance. And so in that process, I eventually became a chaplain, and I started out at Lackland in the Air Force, where we have all of our trainees come in. So I had 3 years of student ministry. Then I was at Travis Air Force Base in California, doing what we call flight line ministry and working with pilots and maintainers. From there, I went to Kadena in Japan and worked with the special operators throughout the Pacific area there. Back to Maxwell. When I say back, that's because we would do our chaplain training, but I was actually assigned there and worked with a different level of student ministries because you have a lot of officer training going on there. And from there, I went to the Pentagon and worked in the Chiefs of Chaplains office for the Air Force, and really got an insight into some of the strategic issues that goes on with the issues of plans and personnel. That was quite interesting and challenging too. Then to Hurlburt Field, where it was with the Special Ops again, and from there, eventually became the combatant of the Air Force Chaplain Col College, and there we train all the chaplains from cradle to grave about how they do their job, whether it's entry-level chaplain or as a senior-level chaplain. And my last assignment is here at EUCOM.
So this is actually where you're going to finish out your career here at EUCOM?
Well, I should say my current assignment.
Got it.
In theory, I have 6 more years left, unless my wife or children tell me otherwise.
We'll see, huh?
Yeah.
How do you guys like Germany? How do you like being stationed over here?
We enjoy it. We've been here about a year and a half. Obviously, COVID has nicked some of our plans, not just personal and family plans, but a lot of my military duties have kind of been challenged as well.
Sure. So that being said, you brought up COVID. One of the themes I've heard from the chaplaincy has been the word resiliency. And so I kind of want to dive into that. What does the word resiliency mean to you, and how does that impact the people that serve over at EUCOM?
Well, I got to say that resiliency has been a buzzword in the military probably for 10 years now, but and maybe has become overused, or there's a lot of expectations when you say the word resilience to fix something. The truth of the matter is resilience is built over time, and it's built out of maybe crisis or chaos, and so we can't fix things that quickly, but you can do some pre-work in resiliency, and that's where you would tie in things like your physical, your spiritual, your mental, and your social health. You do things prior to an incident so that you'll be able to bounce back quicker. And the other thing about resiliency is, I think it's important to recognize, in order to be resilient, it means that you have to come back up from something. And I know leaders would prefer that we never have downs, but it's just the way life is.
It's inevitable.
Yeah. We're gonna struggle, and so resiliency is the ability to bounce back, and maybe bounce back quicker, or to bounce back with less challenges in the process. So
the folks that you work with, the chaplaincy over there at EUCOM, in what kind of ways do you guys help out the resiliency of the people that serve at EUCOM? In what fashion can people reach out to you and kind of interact with you, I guess?
Well, a lot of what the chaplains will do throughout the theater is they're going to be doing counseling. And obviously with COVID, counseling has had to change. For a while, they couldn't do any face-to-face counseling. And so they had to get permission to do it online or virtual counseling. And there are some ethical issues with that. You know, we still have to make sure that we protect the confidentiality of the client or the person that we're seeing. So counseling is one of the ways we help in resiliency. The other thing, I know some people would they would probably be surprised at the value of religious and spiritual health. The ability for people to worship does much more than help their soul. There are physical benefits, there are social benefits, there are a lot of benefits across the board that as people engage in that spiritual and religious health aspects, they're going to be better off. They'll be more resilient facing whatever challenges come their way.
So speaking of you, sir, at one point you mentioned that there's been some challenges due to COVID. And you guys started to do virtual counseling for a while. Are there any other challenges that you guys have faced during COVID, and how have you overcame those challenges?
Well, so counseling is one thing we do. Obviously, worship service, that's a big thing we do. And so for a while, there were some where there were no worship services allowed, depending on what nation some of our chaplains were in.
Right.
And then we were able to start doing them virtually. And that's helping. We're still doing them virtually. A fair amount of the folks, because of their own personal health issues or concerns, are still attending virtually, and others are able to come into the chapel. But to be able to do that, it's been a challenge for us, because unlike you, we're not used to being behind a microphone and a camera quite the same way.
Sure.
And also, we feed off of that personal relationship and that social interaction. And so when you don't see the people on the other side of that virtual screen, it's a little bit of a struggle.
For sure, and that's a challenge that probably everybody has faced in some way or another during COVID, right? They
Absolutely.
haven't had that face-to-face interaction. For us even here to be able to do this, we had to be sure we were 6 feet apart exactly, had the masks on, all that stuff. So definitely that's just the climate of the world, I guess, the way it is right now. One more thing I want to ask you, at least here. You talked about, like, supporting service members. You talked about you guys run services, you do counselings. Are you here primarily to support service members, or does your reach go further than that? Do you also work with family members, and who all do you guys work with?
Yeah, we do work with family members, dependents, and also the civilian populace. And you might not see the same degree of support for the civilian populace back in the States, but here we recognize that sometimes we're the only religious providers who are going to speak the same language, and so we are more apt and able to work with civilians as well.
Have there been any, I guess, challenges that are unique to this duty station, that are unique to working at a combatant command? I'm sure at least your personnel that are assigned to U.S. European Command Headquarters might be a little bit different than another unit. So are there any facets that have been challenging for you working for EUCOM Headquarters?
Well, I would say different. Challenging in its own right, but more so different, just because the folks here have usually they're more advanced in their careers, and so they have different problems than if I was, say, doing student ministry, where people are just off the street and trying to figure out how to adjust to the military. So the problems are different. And we also run into, given the life cycle that a lot of people are in, they're going to be concerned about what their kids are doing in high school or what their parents are doing. The health of their parents is very different than someone coming in off the street. And so a lot of our personnel, their parents are in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. And so COVID has really impacted them, because not only do they have to do their leadership positions and be concerned about their personnel, but really their families, their extended families are struggling with COVID.
Yeah, can only imagine. So EUCOM's AOR is pretty massive. It's comprised of, is it 50 nations?
50 nations.
And with that being said, with all those different nations within this AOR, do you ever have to reach out to any members from different countries around Europe here?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, that's a big part of my job pre-COVID, and it's changed during COVID. But within EUCOM, we have between 32 to 37 nations that have chaplaincies. And the reason I say 32 or 37, it kind of depends on how you define a chaplaincy. Some of these nations only have one chaplain that's going to support their whole nation, their whole military. And they might be dual or triple-hatted with other duties as well. So when you talk about chaplaincies, unlike the U.S. chaplaincy, where we, for example, the Air Force has around 540 chaplains, many nations don't have anything near that. Nevertheless, we do a lot of engagements with them, and we work towards interoperability on the exercises. And as a matter of fact, our office just hosted the International Military Chiefs of Chaplains Conference at the end of January. And we had chaplains from 38 nations. There were about 118 individuals from 38 nations. And some of those were even outside of EUCOM. Some of them were from AFRICOM and from INDOPACOM as well, because this conference, excuse me, has been going on for 32 years. And so there's a history to it, and that's where we talk about how do we be interoperable and how do we cooperate in case there is a crisis or a contingency. So
that's really interesting to hear. I wouldn't have thought that that'd be something that you guys that's super interesting. I guess that's one way that you support. I think it's the commander's second priority, allies and strengthening ties with allies and partners. That has to be a pretty rewarding experience for you too, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible to see what some of these other chaplaincies do. It may be different than us or similar to us. And also the role of religion in some of the European nations is very different than the United States. And so when you see how prominent religion may be, it's from my perspective, it's pretty inspiring, the way they'll look to religion. Also, I guess the other thing we should tie in is the state partnership program. So we have state chaplains back in the United States who are partnering with some of these nations. And so we're coordinating to make sure that our efforts are in sync, not only what the what the state chaplain is doing, but that it aligns with EUCOM's priorities.
Makes sense. Got to kind of have that message alignment. That's something we hear in public affairs a lot, and I'm sure you hear that being a chaplain as well.
Yeah, well, we don't want to, when I talk about the size of chaplaincies, we don't want to overwhelm a nation's chaplaincy because they're talking to the state chaplain from Colorado, and then they're talking to the USER command chaplain, the NAVIR command chaplain, the USAFE command chaplain, then the EUCOM command chaplain. And so we need to make sure that we're talking about the same things and we're working towards the same things.
Absolutely. Well, sir, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us. We really appreciate everything you've said. I've learned a lot about the chaplains department over at EUCOM, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. Looking forward to more opportunities.